Clothing is definitely a challenge, and references can be a huge help. But if you're struggling with understanding how to draw clothing, here are a couple tips and tricks that I use in my own art. The weight of the fabric is a really important thing to keep in mind whenever you're drawing something, and whenever you're drawing heavier fabrics, it's important to keep in mind of how gravity also affects that clothing. Heavier clothing is going to be much more bottom heavy compared to thinner clothing. And since heavier clothing is bottom heavy, you're not going to see as much of this bulkiness up towards areas like the shoulders. Bulkier clothes are also going to have fewer wrinkles, even in areas where the body bends. Adding too many wrinkles will actually break the illusion of weight in the clothing. And just how you want thicker line work for thicker fabrics, you're going to want thinner line work for thinner fabrics. And just how shadows can really help convey a sense of weight for thicker fabrics, it can also do the same for thinner fabrics. Using sharper or more angle shadows and highlights is going to really help convey this idea or this perception that the clothing is thinner. And even with thin clothing, to give it a sense of depth, you can also include a little lip just on certain edges. And even with very subtle movements, you can convey a sense of motion with thinner clothing. Wrinkles are primarily going to be prominent in areas where the body bends, and it's going to go naturally with the curve of the body, not against it. And even with thinner clothing, sometimes less is more. At times you don't need to add an extreme abundance of wrinkles, you just kind of need to know where to put them. Even tight clothing that clings to the body will have these prominent wrinkles in areas where it bends. You'll often see this most prominently in areas such as the bend of the elbow and the knees, as well as the wrist at times. And even though there are characters with more simple designs or more cartoony designs that might not rely as heavily on realistic clothing, and even with more streamlined designs that might even completely omit wrinkles altogether, you can still convey depth with a character's clothing by keeping in mind of how heavy or how thin the fabric is. I hope some of these tips and tricks helped, and as always, good luck and happy arting!